Chapter 3. To Killer from Killer. Something soothed her aching brushes as a wet texture touched her wounds. She felt the warm hands around her, lifting her as the liquid covered her pores, leaving gaps in her eyes, ears, and mouth. She was still in a daze a couple of minutes ago, yet the thick liquid began to fill her mind with its presence. She opened her eyes, and the first three she saw were Lynn, Juno, and Goodboy. Juno summoned her words of salve, closing her eyes and filling the ointment with healing thoughts. "Chali, you're awake," Lynn yelled as she gave the Lyconian a deep hug, wrapping her arms around her neck. Goodboy felt left out, choosing to join in the hug as well. Juno opened her eyes with a smile as Chali woke up with a yawn. Her mind was feeling blank, wondering how she got down there with all the love. Then she flicked her ears, remembering the brawl she had with a certain hunter. Her body fully woke, shooting herself up with energy, scanning the area for that human. Lynn didn't let go, swirling around her and snuggling her chin to the back of Chali's head. There was the bastard, turning his back on her, with the smoke of a stogie floating into the air. Juno released her words of salve as the spell poofed away into little green particles. They all followed her gaze as the hunter took another hit of his herb. "What was last night about?" Lynn asked Chali as she gave the Lyconian a concerned look. Chali pondered for a bit, not really feeling a lengthy story. She didn't want to tell her that she snapped at him for showing his vulnerable state, knowing Lynn would reprimand her action. Lynn knew her well. She would figure out this whole facade she was hiding. Yet the crew flicked their ears when the hunter spoke through his smoke-filled breath. "I said I wanted to clap your cheeks, Lynn," the hunter said with a serious tone, yet Chali knew he was bullshitting. Lynn flicked her ears with a blank stare, while Juno turned around with a shocked face. Goodbye whistles from the declaration, which made Lynn side-eye him with annoyance. Lynn looks at Calculus once more, ready to put her 2 cents in. "I'm flattered, but I still hate your guts," Lynn said with a fake smile as Calculus chuckled while he puffed smoke. Juno was just standing there like a statue. Chali couldn't see her facial expression. She only stared at the back of the hunter's head, which gave her a bit of an idea. Chali sighed, raising herself from the floor, and walked to the hunter. She passed Juno as the half-born notices Chali in her peripheral vision, jumping up with a blush of embarrassment. The crew were cautious of the pair being next to each other, making sure they were close this time. The Lyconian looms over the hunter, who didn't move from his seat. She squinted her eyes at him, not knowing why he was being defensive. She noticed that something was in her pocket, something her body had forgotten she had. It was a thoughtless action, yet she pulled out the adorable notebook of a child with dreams. "Here," Chali said as she slapped the notebook on his shoulder, making Calculus jolt from the surprise. He looks at the notebook, yet he was in no rush to retrieve it. Chali notices his pained demeanor as he looks at it, like this memory stabs his heart. The crew huddle by the two, flicking their ears when they saw the cute cover. "Oh, how cute," Juno said with a hop, truly feeling that the notebook deserved that category. Lynn and Goodboy were confused and shocked, as Chali was being considerate toward him. He had had enough of the bystanders, grabbing the notebook and sliding it back into his backpack. Never thought that you were a kid before, Collie. Always thought that you came from the nightmares of beastkin children. Goodboy said in jest, chuckling to himself, until he noticed that nobody was laughing. He droops his ears as the hunter rose from his seat, turning himself towards Goodboy. Of course, I was one, yet that history is nothing more than memories. Calculus told Goodboy as the three women stood by. Lynn kept her eyes on the bag, like a certain skepticism filled her mind. Juno was filled with excitement, having the topic of the hunter's childhood. I mean, we are already here. I have already healed Chali's wounds. Now I can start with your wounds while you tell me your tales, Juno said as she locked her arms behind her back, tilting her hilt bashfully. Chali flicked her ears at her implications, sounding like the hunter wanted her to heal him before him. The idea made her snarl as she grabbed the hunter by his collar. The Misfits reached out to her, yet stopped when her voice cracked. Why do you keep on doing this? Chali pleaded with the hunter as he squinted his eyes at her question. Lynn put her hand on the Lyconian, remembering the small pup she met all those years ago. Juno and Goodboy just decided to keep their distance, as this was solely between the two. Because I hate you, the hunter said with a cold tone, making Lynn angry at his claim. Chali was finally being vulnerable, and he decided to be a dick. She reached for her daggers, only for Chali to hold her hand. She released the hunter as she stared him down with frustrated eyes. You took everything from me that day, my reason, my purpose. I know it's history. I know I can never wash out the stains on my hands. Yet you walk with friends, people that care about you, after you took the lives of a few innocent souls. The hunter said with anger, making the group uneasy. Yet they were surprised, as Chali was listening without any anger. Once he was finished, she had some words. To killer from killer, let's move forward, Chali said as she walked away without any anger. The Misfits were surprised by this outcome, even the hunter. Calculus laughed, making the Misfits question their sanity. It meant nothing to the group, yet to Calculus, it meant the world. Their hands will forever be stained in blood, yet that doesn't matter to both of them. Lynn flicks her ears at their crazy talk, yet she has a question for Calculus. So are you part honey badger? How could you still have a pretty mug after Chali whooped your ass? Lynn asked the hunter as the group waited for his answer. Seen through the lens of a spyglass, the Misfits observe the flat plains. Miles of road were visible from their perch as they watched a caravan of slavers walk toward the north. What do you see, Cal? Lynn asked the hunter as he observed the line with his scope. They hid in some bushes, huddling together as he observed. Juno was by Lynn, Goodboy was happily by Chali's side, panting with delight. Calculus sees 20 men mixed with races as they transport cargo. He starts from the front, listing the following. Got a Panrius with a lute, Vulpes and Centelope females hugging each other, Boltaris with chains, a Sith, and a Rhea sharing a cage, and the last one unknown. Calconus listed, citing 7 pieces of sentient cargo as they went to the east. Juno flicks her ears when she hears Centelope, drooping her ears with bad memories. Time to vote, gang. What do we do? Lynn asked the crew as they pondered their answers. I say leave them. We have no prerogative to save anybody. Plus, the horde of men we need to take out. Calconus said right after her question, gaining disappointment from Juno. How could you answer so quickly? Juno said with a bit of irritation, hoping Cal could be a bit more noble. Lynn looked at that pouting Juno as she had an idea what she wanted. I assume you're on the safe party, Lynn asked Juno, who nodded as she continued to watch the caravan. Hate to break it to you, Juno, but I'm with Cal on this one. Those are some big dudes, and their numbers scare me. Lynn told the crew, getting a sad grunt from Juno. They have some pretty-looking females with them. I say we go and save the damsels in distress. Goodboy told his true intent as the ladies gave him a look. They shook their heads. They should have been expecting Goodboy to think with his balls. You are the Delta little bun. Say the word, and we leave them be, Calconus said as Chile was still pondering. Lynn did have that card to play, and whichever decision Chile made could be up to her. The vote of a leader always meant 2, as Gardner would say. Lynn shakes her head, leaving the choice to Chile. Chile would leave them to be. The weak would always be plundered, devoured, or both. Yet she looks at Juno, remembering that she was once that frightened little rabbit in that alley. Now she wanted to put herself in danger, saving those who were in the same funk. Plus, she really hated slavers, no matter what race they were. Let's feast on slave meat, Chile told the crew, having Juno relieve her breath. Calconus sighs as he eyes the 2 big Boltaris, each equipped with a heavy axe that no other races could. Got a plan. I'm just gonna put craters in these guys. Calconus looks at Lynn as she chuckles devilishly. The crew looks at her with curiosity as Chile droops her ears. Oh no. Chile didn't like it when Lynn chuckled to herself. Usually, it had to do with something perverted. I do have a very interesting idea, Lynn said with conviction and silly pride. Scene. The 2 shiver inside their cage, as they don't know what life they will find at the end of their tale. The Vulpes and the Centelope held together with their dear lives. The 2 jackalopes stood beside them, eyeing their smaller species cousin with sick grins. The Vulpes snarls at the men, protecting her friend from the fiends. Hey boys, we have some company, the front men said with a sickening grin. Some of the men were whistling and hollering, making the pair flick their ears out of curiosity. The Panrius stops playing her lute. The chained Boltaris covers his eyes and blushes. They Sith and Rhea joined in the hollering, liking what they saw. The being in the blanket had some curiosity, but continued to rest in his cage. Scene. Hey, big boys. "What does a little bun have to do to get a ride out here?" Lynn said as she animated her hip movement, making sure she stopped with a hip pop. She and Chali stood by the road as they both showed the men a hitchhiker's thumb. They had their clothes a bit unbuttoned, their tunics showed some cleavage, and their shorts were lowered to show cracks. Chali wraps her tail under her legs as the group of males panted and leered with lust. The group of slavers walked into the sight of the hunter as he waited for the signal. The slavers stopped their stride, slowly surrounding the two females with lustful chuckles. Chali acted as the timid one, really making the canines' tails wag. Lynn walked up to one of the jackalopes, arching her back forward so he could see some cleavage. The males got excited, thumping their foot and whistling at their prey. A shadow loomed over Lynn as a Baltar stood over her with a grin. "You two look a little lost," what appeared to be the leader said to her as he took a knee in an attempt to get to her level. He was still 2 feet taller as he looked down at the scantily dressed centerlope. Lynn hid her true intentions like a pro, giving him the smile of an innocent little rabbit. She swiftly looked behind the large Baltaris as Goodboy and Juno got to work. Goodboy made sure that the slavers' gaze wasn't on their product, waving for Juno to head to the cage lock. The Sithkatul and Rhea prisoners looked at the half-born crouching by the mysterious body in the back, smiling at one another, for this was a rescue. The Vulpes wagged while keeping her excitement down as the Centelope flicked their ears with curiosity. The Baltaris prisoner noticed them, yet chose to ignore them. The Panrius continued to whirl her finger as she hummed, "We are super lost. We were adventuring with another party until they kicked us out. He was so rude to say we weren't keeping our weight." Lynn played the part, making the slavers think that they were secluded from a settlement. The canines surround Chali as she covers her mouth slyly. She fidgeted, making some of the canines howl. "Hey babe, what clan are you with?" one of the Lyconians asked Chali as he got into her personal space. She swiftly showed him a bit of her explosive personality, but she calmed herself and played the part. I am a clanless Lyconian. My former alpha told me that I was too weak to continue the bloodline." Tool told the smiling male. It wasn't a rare occurrence for packs of bandit Lyconians to banish weaker members. They were buying her story as they looked at her toned body while licking their lips. Calcanus chuckled to himself as he saw her timid charade, knowing her true nature as a killer. He makes sure to keep an eye on the rescue team, making sure they don't get spotted. Juno pulls a ripe piece of paper with a black rose drawn on it. She lays the sheet on the lock, filling the symbol with mana. She thinks of the words salve as the paper turns into a controllable ointment. She didn't control its properties, as she figured out that if she didn't do anything, the cream would act like a potent acid. The salve went into the lock's gears, melting them away as she ripped the lock off. The beauty of this spell was that she wouldn't get burned from it, meaning that she wouldn't be able to heal her own wounds either. She pats the figure on its back. Its grunts sound like it's still in a deep slumber. She looks at Goodboy as he signals her to move on. Don't worry. The guys and I see how stacked you are. Continuing your bloodline isn't a problem. The Lyconian rubs her cheek, which she only stares at the male's audacity. That guy's super dead. Calcanus thought to himself, playing on what Lynn told the Baltaris. From what the Lyconian told him, she wasn't one to be played with, not anymore. Through the scope, he sees Lynn flick her ears, twitching, signaling that one of the males was losing interest. You know what we are, little bun. We aren't nice sentients, the Baltaris said as he saw his next payday, while his men laughed. The jackalope droops its ears as Lynn focuses on the Baltaris, turning to see Juno clicking the pair's lock. She flicks her ears, twitches, and grabs the jackalope's arm. She blinks at him with suggestions, as the rest of the slavers liked her body language. So what should I do to make you guys nice sentients? Lynn said as she grabbed the jackalope's finger, biting it with naughty eyes. She has the attention of the men as Juno and Goodby get to the Baltaris. Juno observes the chains as the quiet Minotaur directs her eyes with his own. He guides her to a center lock, one that held the rest together. She brings her finger to the lock, letting her salve do the rest. I can think of some things you can do, the Baltaris leader said as he wraps his hands around Lynn's waist. He picks her up without any problem as the jackalope stares at the bull with anger. The leader scoffs at his underling as Lynn laughs to play the part of a horny little rabbit. He plops the brown rabbit on his shoulders, giving her plump legs a kiss. Lynn chuckles as she masks her disgust, looking at the jackalope as he sighs and turns back. Lynn flicks her ears 3 times, signaling the hunter to take a shot. Goodby had the opposite orders. When she flicks her ears thrice, that's when he and Juno go into hiding. Juno breaks the chains while the Baltaris prisoner holds them, a ruse to keep up the appearance. Goodby grabs Juno from the shoulder as he guides her to the other side of the wagons. Juno felt bad for the Panrius, but only saw her wave a hand to signal that she was all right staying in the cage. She nodded at the Panrius as they took positions. While this action happened, in the split seconds, the hunter's instincts slowed down time in their brains. One of the jackalope was about to spot Juno as Lynn flicked her ears thrice. He has to choose a target quickly. Does he go for the spotter or a larger target? He wanted to take the leading bull, but he slides Lynn's body around to cradle her legs around his face. There were 2 other Baltaris. Add 2 Panthymatas with not so different danger levels. He blanks his expression in his mask. The hissing snake found his target. Bang! The loud smack of musket fire rang in the group's ears as a large thumb came after it. What the hell is going on? The leader yelled out as he dropped Lynn into his arms, cradling her like a babe. Lynn breathed a sigh of relief as that was getting over her comfort level. Annie, a scary beast slayer is up there, super scary. Lynn flails around in the Baltaris's arms as he looks beside him to see a brother lying on the ground limp. Calcanus decided to take out a Baltaris as their mass and brawn made them too dangerous with numbers. The slavers snarled as Calchonus fell from his perch on a tree, standing in the open to show his presence. The slavers didn't waste any time pulling out their dueling pistols and bows. Calchonus grabs a neutralizing bomb from his belt, made from the Calicochum rose, and stabs it with his gauntlet blade. He lets the smoke mask his scent, running back into the woods under the smoke screen as they return fire. They rushed at him in numbers, as Challis made sure she had 2 Lyconians in her arms. "Please don't go, I'm scared. I need strong males to keep me protected," she pleads to the 2 Lyconians, who nod at her suggestion. The Baltaurus leader chooses to stay as well, as he slings Lynn on his shoulders. He liked the view of her plumb rear, not focusing on her killer intent. She climbs the bull like a viper, wrapping her legs around his neck and pulling his nose as he grunts. He couldn't let out questions as Lynn pulls out a dagger, craving his neck like a poultry dinner. "Ah, ah, ah," she stabs his neck furiously, letting his blood stain her brown fur and smooth skin. The large Baltaurus drops as Lynn rolls off him gracefully. The Lyconians see this in a second. The once horny rabbit shows her predator side. They don't have a chance to react as Challis pulls out a sheathed dagger and lunges it into his throat. She lets the male choke on his blood as the last thing the mouthy Lyconian sees is her snarling anger. "Ah," the male screams as Challis uses her strong legs to trip him up, digging her jaws into his neck. He falls over with a trail of blood squirting out of his neck as Challis pins him on the floor. She thrashes her jaws, cracking the male's bones as he goes limp. 6 of the men haven't entered the woods to combat the hunter yet, turning to see the slaughter. The 2 Panthemata roar, and the 2 Lyconians snarl. The males produce a nervous sweat as they stare at the 2. Challis' jaw is dripping with blood as Lynn looks behind her with the eyes of a killer. The slavers like their chances. They might be 2 psychos, but they were still 2 small females. Lynn rushes towards Juno with Challis following, while the group shoots their dueling pistols. The huddle by Goodboy and Juno as the latter begins her words of power. Eradicibus fiamis, ad solum compactum, scopum meum velat, arborum liga. Juno threw a seed filled with her mana, landing at the rushing men. Vines sported violently, wrapping the goons with a bind. Goodboy, Lynn, and Challis rush the screaming men as the binds thrash them around, preparing their arms. Goodboy tenses his muscles, slashing at a Panthemata's throat and plunging the next attack into a Lyconian. Challis chooses to wail her blades at the following Lyconian, silencing him after the 3rd stab. Challis lunges with a bound from her powerful legs, snapping her jaws on the last Panthemata's neck, ripping out a chunk. "Is the brutality over?" Juno asked as she pointed her head out, as the slaves busted out of their confinement. The 2 in the back busted out, rushing toward the fallen bodies. They swirled them around and scavenged some weapons and ammo as the group looked at them. "Nice to meet you, tall ones. I'm Piff. Thanks for letting me out, psycho broads." Piff introduces himself as he pulls a dueling pistol from the Lyconian, loading it with balls and gunpowder. Chalice snarls while Lynn buttons up her clothing, eyeing the guy with hostility. Is it wise to name-call anyone when they're covered in blood? Lynn asked the small sentient a question, making him sweat. They got enough of the small one as they looked at the Sithcatul, clicking the hammer. Oh, name's Tabio, hired killer. Tabio gave them a short introduction, making Chali laugh. Join the club, Chali said as she put her arms around her hips. Tabio laughs at her declaration as he pulls a smoke from the dead bodies. He lights it with a match as he puffs the flame to feed. You two misses are no hired killers, more like you do it for the love of the game. Except for White Rabbit, you all are just killers, Tabio said as he observed them, annoying everyone but Juno. Again, not something you should tell a sentient with blood on them. Toolies, Goodle, I think we chose wrong. Lynn turns behind her, then sighs as Goodboy was already helping the Vulpies and Centelope out. You have been saved, my ladies, Goodboy said, while he deepened his voice as the Misfits stared at him with annoyance. Thank you, the Vulpes said as she hugged Goodboy, making the dog pant. We owe our lives to you guys. The Centelope joins the embrace, really making his tail wag. While that was happening, Juno went to check on the Balturus prison, seeing that he was wearing the robes of a pastor. Excuse me, Sister Rabbit, the Balturus pastor said as he flexed his muscles to break the remaining chains, scaring Juno. She still had some bad memories with bullmen, but the pastor bowed to her. Thank you for freeing me, Sister Rabbit. My name is Bryon, a disciple of Christianity. Bryon introduces himself, making Juno flick her ears in confusion. She had never heard of this cult before, as the man clapped his hands in prayer. O merciful Father, thank you for sending your coven to aid the wanderers. Amen. Bryon prays as Juno backs away from his witchcraft. It sounded like how mages create spells, yet she got confused when nothing happened. Hey, Jun, can you help us with this cage? Lynn asked as she stood by the Panrias's cage, as she played a sweet melody on her lute. Goodboy was humming the sweet melody as the two women continued to hug him. Tabio walks by her as he points the dueling pistol at the lock. Let me handle this, Killer Bun, Tabio said as he shot the lock clean off, making the group flick their ears from the noise. The Panrias didn't flinch as she continued her hymns. She crawled out while she kept stringing, finishing her song and giving a bow. Hello, great travelers. I am the songstress Ribley. Nice to make your acquaintance with such noble heroes. Ribley introduces herself with a very calm and soothing voice, the voice of a singer. Juno found her voice soothing as she gasped with a blush. Byron nods with a smile as he plants his feet on the ground as a freeman. I must thank you all, even when your methods are a bit savage, Bryon said with a bit of hesitation, making Lynn smile with pride. Juno flicks her ears at the mention of the word, raising her finger. Speaking of savages, how do we know if Calculus is all right? Juno worries about the hunter as he fights alone in the forest. Chili snarls in annoyance at the mention of his name, while Lynn looks at the forest. The very audible sounds of pistol shots and screams still flood the unknown. I'm sure he's fine, Lynn said as she straightened her back, turning to Juno with a grin. Juno blushed as this was starting to be a thing. She was assuming too much. He's just a member of our party. Can't I just worry about a fellow colleague? Juno said as she pouts, making Lynn laugh. She stops as she notices the rest of the slaves staring at Juno. Byron didn't react this way. Even the two females backed away from Goodboy when they locked eyes with her. Come on, Goodboy complains, as the two now look at Juno with fear. It's a half-born, the Vulpes and Centelopes said as they hugged each other, fearing her presence. Tabio and Piff showed their hostility toward Juno, making sure to keep a pistol ready. Byron covers the women as the Misfits rush to back her up. Wait. No one touches the half-born on my watch, Lynn announced to the group as they still remained cautious. Juno droops her ears out of heartbreak as it was happening again. The stigma and the hostility still stayed evident in their gazes. Don't mean any harm to your crew, little bun, but we have some beef with half-borns, Tabio said as he stared daggers at the shivering Juno. Yeah, she might be working with the high evolutionary. The last half-born set me up, Piff said, as he had enough distance from the hostility. The Misfits flick their ears at the mention of the high evolutionary. I swear to you all, I'm not a part of, Juno said, only to be cut off. That's what the agent said as he killed Lou, putting Yen and I in these cages for their boss. The Vulpes yelled at Juno. Okiki, Yen said to her friend, shaking her sleeve. It was an attempt to calm her friend, for the half-born did save them. Juno flicks her ears with excitement, then it falls in horror. The crew was to focus on current matters until they heard a plop next to them. The ex-slaves looked down to see a severed Baltaris head as the voice sent jolts down their backs. I won't let anybody slander our little rabbit on my watch, Calculus said in a menacing voice, covered in the blood of his victims. The four stood up straight as they felt the hunter's killer intent. Juno was happy for Calculus to speak of her honor, but she blushed from his insinuation. Cal, it's okay, you do. Juno was going to tell him that she didn't need his protection until he opened his mouth. She can't be a part of the high evolutionary. She's too innocent and ignorant, Calculus said with confidence, as Juno's eyes and ears twitched. Eratocibus fiames ad solium compactum, scopum meum velut arborum liga. Juno summons a bind to ensnare Calculus, as he only showed his indifferent face to the crowd. See, too innocent to kill me, Calculus says to make a point, as Juno's fury boiled over. You shut your bastard mouth. Juno yelled what she was thinking, as the Misfits covered their faces with shock. Then, the crew saw that the four bowed to Juno's power, making her flinch by lifting one of her legs. She has the power to tame beast slayers. She's the one, Piff said. Anyone who has his kind by the balls is trustworthy to me, Tabio said. You're so cool, Yen announced. I'm sorry for judging you. Please forgive me, Okiki apologized. Juno was speechless as her emotions swelled with embarrassment. She wasn't focused enough to hold Calconus's bind as the hunter ripped himself out. Lin, Chili, and Goodboy smiled at Juno with a sharp grin, making her pull on her ears as she hid behind Byron. The crew grew silent as the hunter walked to the last cage. Juno peeks out as Calconus slowly walks the cloaked figure's cage, while the rest of them follow. The former slaves showed some curiosity as well, shadowing him. All that the dude did was sleep and scratch its ass, but none of us know who or what it is, Piff said as she tried to keep up with the group with her small legs. Yen and Okiki hold each other with nervous sweat, gasping as the hunter pulls out his dueling pistol. Lin hops to his side, while Chili reluctantly follows them with Goodboy. Juno stays behind the group with a tremble in her walk. The hunter pulls the cage door open, with the figure still snoozing even after the pistol fire. Calconus looks at Lin for orders, with her giving a nod. He loads the dueling pistol quickly. Once it had a ball and gunpowder, he pokes the figure's rear. Hey, get up, Calconus said, as he shoved the barrel down the figure's noticeably cracked, making the figure scream. It had a male-sounding voice, one that echoed with youth. He shakes himself out of the sheets, staring at Calconus with scared eyes. The whole group was frightened, as his features were not what they were expecting. Calconus was just speechless, as the figure just looked like a reflection of his features. I told you last time that I don't swing that way, the human male said as he looked at the masked hunter in fear. His clothes seemed off, having a weird pattern on his tunic and weird letters on his trousers. He seemed to be Juno's age, with developing masculine features, brown eyes, and a brown mop head. His skin was paler than anything the hunter had seen, like he had never felt the embrace of the sun. A otherworlder, Calconus said with a tilt of his head, while the rest of the group gasped. Juno shimmies through the crowd as she gasped at the human male's appearance. His clothes were definitely not from this world, as the human male locks eyes with half the crew. His eyes glowed at the sight, seeing Chili's cleavage, the cute rabbit ears, the fox wagging its red tail, and the fluffy hips on the pancreas. Chili snarls at the human male, not getting a negative reaction from him. Yes, finally, this is my popular phase. All the Cheminonomy babes I can ask for. The human gets excited, leering at all the females around his cage. Juno, Yen, and Okiki cover themselves from the nasty leers. Chili shows open hostility, while Lin scratches her ears. Ki mono me. Lin found the word interesting enough to forget that they had an alive otherworlder. Calconus couldn't show his building rage under his mask, but it was coming. Click. Calconus pulls back the hammer with malicious intent. as Byron touches the human's shoulder. Wait, Mr. Hunter, sir. My gospel says that we must treat our neighbors with kindness, not hostility. Byron said with a nervous sweat, for his morals didn't allow senseless killing. He still had some lingering fear from the serpent slayer. Piff and Tabio stood behind the hunter, seeing coins from the boy. I say sell him to the next slaver. Otherworlder meat costs some coins. If you are willing to collaborate, Piff said, while he thought of the easy coins he could get if the Misfits were suckers. Chili gives the small Rhea a hungry stare as he hides behind Tabio. I think it was a mistake to let this munch go. Chili leaned to Lin's ear as the centelope nodded. Hear me out, Leader Rabbit. What if this otherworlder's clothes are worth some coin? If you guys pay well, I have no problem following a little bun around. Tabio said, as he suggested robbing the young otherworlder. Lyn flicks her ears at the idea of a coin as she turns to the Sith with a good idea. As Delta of the group, I pronounce Tabio as a member of the Moor clan. The only grip I have with you is the lack of using my name. Lyn said with a devilish grin as Chili wags her tail with excitement. She appreciated that her ruthlessness hadn't fully died out. Lyn flicks a silver coin towards Tabio while she jiggles her coin pouch, making the Sith nod at the bun with respect. Piff sees this and decides to join up with the crew. Having psycho females with coins should be interesting. At your service, Delta Lyn. The two mercs bow as they are now part of the Moor clan. Juno flicks her ears in horror, turning to Lyn. You guys are not really, Juno tried to ask. Roll call, do we take his clothes? Lyn asked the crew. Yes, Chili, Goodboy, Calcanus, Piff, and Tabio said in unison. Juno drooped her ears as she expected more from them. Well, that was her fault, she thought. Lyn pulls her knife, dripping with blood, and masked with the slaver's blood at his throat. The human trembles as warm blood drips on his legs, staining his otherworldly attire. Whoa, take it easy now. I'm just the human said as he was interrupted by Lyn. I better start seeing Pelt Boy. It's either the clothes or we leave you, she threatened. The human grumbles to himself, pouting with every button on his white tunic with weird symbols. While he does that, the human locks eyes with Calcanus, defeated and hurt emotionally. Don't look at me like that, Calcanus said as the human dropped his pants. The sound of falling fabric and a flick startled the hunter. The group gasps at the human's buddy. It didn't have a layer to protect it from the seasons. Oh God, what is that? Lyn said as she diverted her eyes. Chili was startled by her reaction with her buddy. Chili locked eyes with it as her mind went blank from how it just hung. Juno blushes, squealing like a scarred maiden as she diverts her eyes. Goodboy gets in closer, really getting a good view from the human's bud. His peepee is forever out, Goodboy said before Chili slapped him across the head. Scene. This is a very nice turn of events. Bathing after the bloodshed we witnessed really washes away the sins, Brian said as he rested under a waterfall, keeping his hands together. The Misfits and the liberated slaves found themselves in a nearby river, away from the roads. Everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves, except for Juno and Chile. Calcanus as well. He was out finding food. The two submerged themselves side by side, turning their backs on being ogled. Lynn was splashing water with Okiki and Yennefi. Yen's true name. Taste my water, Lynn told the two, slapping the water into their eyes. The two gladly returned fire as Okiki turned toward Ribley. The Panrius plays her lute as the sentients bathe, while Goodbye acts as her headrest. He panted as he felt her weight, her body heat keeping his back warm. Her corset made Goodbye curious look behind. Her tight trousers really whetted his lustful side. Ribley slaps the Infenriel's head as he was staring at her rounded mounds, continuing when he diverts his eyes. You really like playing, huh? Even caged up, you just played the lute. Okiki told the easygoing goat as she flicked her Eumelanan bangs. Being caged would never stop my passion for music. My lute is where I trust my soul, Ribley said, with a swirl of her finger, returning to her chimes. Tabio and Piff sat next to each other, as Tabio whirled his finger with the melody, while Piff eyed the three water players. Piff was smiling with a flushed face, eyeing Yen's gray coat and other oddities. He didn't notice Lynn coming for his eyes, screaming as he thrashed in the water. Once Lynn finished her assault, she flicked her ears with the elder Sithkatul, as he only cared about Ribley's music. Far from your breeding days, old man. Lynn swirled her body to sit next to him, while Piff started to flow down the river. Okiki and Yennefi saved the Rhea, with Yen choosing to hold the tiny male in her arms, oblivious to his longing. Tabio laughs at her claim as he lights a cigar from his box near his clothes. I've been around long enough. The urges are long gone. I had many kittens with different mothers. Many of my children are either dead or never want to talk to me. What can you do when you lived your life as a tomcat? The elder cat said, blowing his pipe with mature elegance. Well, if you're partying with us, you'll be the eldest. You really would follow the orders of a bun decades younger than you. Lynn asked the graying black cat. Many elders scoff at the authority of the youth. He shakes his head as he smiles with a carefree aura. Nah, my leading days are over. I'm older than anyone I know. This seems like your gig. I have no right to challenge the youth. Tabio tells Lynn, easing her suspicions about his goals. He seemed to be an open book, only surviving for the point of survival. Lynn then flicks her ears to the two shy parts of her party, the backs of a half-born and Lyconian. Jun, I understand, but Chile, what's making you so bashful over there? Lynn asked, while Tabio passed her his cigar after a puff. She flicked her ears with excitement, gladly accepting his offering. Chile only looks behind her peripheral vision, as the otherworlder was just floating in the water, jaded and weeping. The human was holding a net filled with the group's blood-stained clothes, letting the river wash them clean. He was still human, one too many in her mind. We should have just eaten him. He sounds weak over my shoulder. Chili told Lin, while the humans flinched from her declaration. Juno flicked her ears, being wrong, but she still felt uncomfortable with these group baths. The girls and Piff stopped rummaging in the water, as the threat of someone getting eaten kind of made them uncomfortable. Lin signs out a cloud, passing the cigar back to Tabio while she pulls out her bounty. The otherworlder contributed his clothes and washes the group's clothes for free. I say he's in good hands. Are you, Mr. Gab? Lin said his name after he tried to explain that the symbols had his last name. He was crying, of course, but he still gave her his goods. They traded him some dead jackalope's armor and tunic, so he could blend in afterward. I mean, sure, you can call me Delson instead of just Gab. It makes me feel old and Jewish. Well, I am Jewish, but I never visited my grandparents' homeland. Delson rambled as he held the net, with Chili threatening his meat if he were to let go. Lin flicks her ears when he says Jewish, never hearing about those people. Juno flicks her ears with curiosity about his people from another world, yet she is still shy for anyone to see her body. Then Delson, keep up the good work, Lin said with a wink at the man, making him blush as he returned to work. Chili snarls as she does that, using her natural charm to ensnare another victim. Yennefer floats at Delson while holding Piff in her arms, exposing her soft skin and gray pelt. She hugs his body while she reels in the rope, making the male scream. He felt everything, and her soft body felt so unreal, as if it were everything he expected. Mind if you help me out, stud? Yen whispers into Delson's ear as he takes a gulp. His hormones filled his brain, nodding from her question. She tied something onto the rope, then let it go. The net quickly went down to the river, as Delson felt a great tug. Yennefer tied Piff to the end of the rope, with Delson fighting the stronger water flow as Piff thrashes in panic. Thank you, cutie, she said while she walked back to Okiki, who was pouting at her actions. Lin flicks her ears with pride as another predatory rabbit shows itself. Okiki ignores the show, choosing to walk towards Juno and Chili. Juno's back twitches from the gaze. Chili flicks her ears, ignoring it entirely. You guys really tamed a slayer. Do you have some mind-breaking spell or something? Okiki directs the question to Juno, who still felt nervous for having a predatory species eyeing her back. It was instinct, even if her brain knew she had a centalope friend. Chili chuckles, having the two and Lin turn their attention to her, more like forced to tolerate his presence. Every day he tests my patience. Every day he taunts me. I wish I could just kill him already. Chili mumbles her resentment at the hunter, making Okiki wag her tail with slyness. Sounds to me like you want to mate with the hunter, Okiki said, while Lin chuckled and averted her head from the coming confrontation. Juno turns her head at Chili, drooping her ears with a flushed face, as she expected something between them. Chili rose from her secluded bath, barking at the Vulpies. Why does everyone come up with that shit? Why would I settle for a human, especially one that fires blanks? Tool didn't realize that she shouted out sensitive information as the group went silent. The girls looked at her with flushed faces, while the men had blank expressions. Goodbye droops his ears, pouting from her words. She realized that the group assumed that they did in fact mate. Why would she know this information? Geez, Tulls, never thought you would, Lynn said with a bit of disgust, like everything Chili told her was a lie. It was the same feeling she felt from Demona, one where a certain person's opinion mattered. She looked down at Juno, who chose to submerge herself while she made bubbles with her mouth. Chili froze like a statue, twitching with a flushed face. I don't know, the masked slayer seems really scary. Yennefer tells the quiet crowd, drooping her ears and fidgeting while she looks at Chili. Chili felt seen, wagging her tail at someone that got her. Then, the cracking of trees echoed through the silence as everyone looked at the disturbance. It came from a bit further down the stream, as a figure perched on a tree with a crafted spear. He only had his underwear, and his lean, toned, muscular build showed to the world. He had enough hair on his body to please the appetites of beastkin, as the women focused. Chili saw his messy raven hair, his forming stubble after lacking proper human grooming for a week. He stared down the flowing river, the reflection of the setting sun reflecting his emerald eyes. He had the eyes of a hunter, with his net and spear ready for harvesting. Who's that hottie? Yennefer yelled as the group chuckled at her honesty. Black hair and green eyes, almost the embodiment of a black cat. Mysterious and independent, enough to make any female swoon nice. Ribley said as she felt a stroke of creativity, wondering if she could write a song about the jaded-eyed hunter. Have to admit, if I had those emerald eyes instead of my yellow, I would have fathered more kittens from the most stubborn females back home. Tabio said as he appreciated the young man's aura. Is that the same scary man from before? He looks like the man of the jungle who lives with gorillas. Delson commented while he still held Piff by a single tugging rope. That's our resident skull-cracking former human hunter, Calcanus. He should be fine as long as no one gives him a large rock. Lynn tells the group, while still harboring former trauma. Juno twitches her left ear consecutively, with a vein popping out as she bubbles. Chili still harbored resentment for the hunter, but her curiosity overshadowed the feeling. Humans would always use bows and fire powder to do their hunting. They are too weak to gather fish alone. The hunter squints, pouncing down once the flow of fish is enough to his liking. He lands in a roll, stabbing a largemouth bass with his momentum. He quickly shoves the big fish into his bag while he gains footing. He stabs at the fish quickly. The winter season really made them slower to catch. Even with the handicap of the fish, he still moved quickly to catch his prey. Subsequent jabs filled his spear, making Chili's ears twitch with a blank stare. It was Lyconian instinct to scoff at weapons, as the race never needed the advantage to hunt. She remembers that she caught 6 with her outing with Bullwag, making her a proud Lyconian. Yet seeing the hunter double her catch rate didn't anger her. She just expected it to happen. He smiles from the adrenaline, swirling around like a male ballerina, never having wasted movement. Lynn saw Chili staring at the display, wagging her tail. Lynn droops her ears with a bit of sadness. Chili has never looked at another sentient with such excitement before. Scene. Lord, I thought I was going to die out here, Lynn said as she munched on the grilled green onions and wild carrots forged by Calcanus. Yen, Bryon, and Ribley happily joined her vegetable paradise, as they are herbivores. Bryon was gifted the largest batch of wild lettuce, crunching on the leafy goodness. Ribley enjoyed the smoke on the green onions. The natural water juice coated it nicely on every bite. I must thank you, Brother Calcanus. I wouldn't have found these delicacies on my own. Bryon said that the rest of the group had no problem eating fish. They had a campfire made, making Delson work for his life with the hunter's help. The fish had a smoky scent, as they had just finished roasting evenly. Juno sat by Calcanus, pulling a skewer from the flame, biting down on its natural salty skin. Calcanus gave a chuckle as the half-born bounced her body, savoring the delicious meat. What? Juno swallows the bite, turning to the amused hunter with an innocent head tilt. He just shakes his head, getting a skewer for himself. Damn, this weird-looking fish tastes good. Delson sat on the opposite side, letting the hot fire dry his new leather armor. Without their meeting, he would look like a human far from their lands. Okiki, Goodboy, and Tabio prefer the fish to be raw, never really seeing the point in cooking its natural flavors away. Which leaves Chili eyeing her largemouth bass, conflicted about eating the hunter's handout. Lynn sees her just staring, sighing from the moody woman. Just leave your dumb Lyconian pride behind you and eat. Lynn tells Chili as she flicks her ears with embarrassment. She couldn't help but look at the hunter, which she regretted very quickly. He gave her a shark smile, fueling her anger while she forcibly suppressed it. Lynn did tell her to eat it. She's only doing this because Lynn told her to. She bites the flaky skin, smiling at the light meat's flavor. Got freed by these guys and treated to a campfire meal. These guys are all right. Piff told Tabio as they both enjoyed their meals. Tabio finishes his fish, burying its bones back into the ground. This is the life I crave, for every day may be my last, eating good fish next to interesting sentience. Tabio said with a swaying tail, going into his second fish. The ex-slaves have become part of the Misfits, giving Lynn a smirk as the crew idly chatters. Yet one conversation came up with Calcanus and Tabio. If I may ask, how did a veteran of the Triangle like you get captured? Calcanus said while he buried his first fish. Tabio liked the sound of his words, entertaining the young hunter. With age comes the point where someone else can outmatch you, son. In my case, something. Tobioi said with ominous resentment. The Misfits started to go silent, letting the two talk. Something, Calcanus questioned. Have you ever heard the tales of a Panrius female wearing a face cloth, luring hungry, sentient eaters and horny vagabonds in alleyways? Tabio said, while he shaped the natural curves of a woman going back for a bite of fish? I have. Calcanus squints his eyes, telling Juno that he more than likely knows where this story is going. Well then, I guess you're familiar with the tale of Dollface, Tabio said, having the group flick their ears. She sounds like a babe, Delson added, having Lynn turn to him. I wouldn't get my hopes up. Otherworlder beings don't get nicknames until they've stacked a lot of bodies. Lynn tells Delson, who gulps from her cautionary wisdom. I stacked bodies she did, devouring even the most hardy Boltaris down to the bone. Tabio said, making Byron jolt from the tale. Ribley started to play her lute with an ominous melody, liking the bit of story time. Juno tilts her head, finding the fact that a Panrius has an insatiable hunger for flesh. Are you saying? Juno questioned, as the Sith nodded his head. Dollface is a heavily mixed chimera. Tabio gets to his point, making the group gasp. Juno trembles from the news, for tales told that this being acted more like a monster than a sentient. Dollface looks like a curvy little Panrius, just like our Ribley here. With a single glance, she blends into crowds, masking her pheromones with mountains of perfume. I hunted her down back in Glade, making her hunting grounds the whole walls. She ambushed me, throwing me into a cage with that predatory smile, filled with serrated teeth. Tabio describes the creature, making Juno tilt her head again. Are you saying this Panrius chimera was able to overpower you? Ribley is tiny compared to you. How can you be overpowered? Juno questions. Dollface is small, but she weighs over 300 pounds of muscle. Calcanus added, confirming Juno's suspicions. Such a tiny frame, yet weighing a smaller Bulataris, was insane, making the group sweat. Met her before? Tabio asked. A couple of months ago, in fact, not far from Glade. I was scouting late at night with the human knights I was with. She came out of nowhere, butchering the men with incredible strength and ferocity. I tried to slam her to the ground, struggling against her unnatural weight. I felt like I couldn't win, choosing to run instead of retrieving the dead. Calcanus said as he clenched his hand out of frustration. Juno was surprised to hear the hunter fleeing from battle. She never thought that was possible. Chali was shocked as well. What beast would make her rival a coward? You're smarter than me, young man. My elder pride got the best of me, letting the beast one-up Tabio. He said with a swaying tail, with large pauses, showing that the outcome angered him. So the lot of you were going to Dollface? Chali asked the crowd, and the majority nodded their heads. Delson was just eating fish, refusing to pay attention. She smiles from the news, looking up at the 3 large orcs that snuck their way to camp. You get all that, more Sikalai and Gardner? Chali asked the orcs as the new bloods trembled in fear. Their bodies froze as the fire's shadow was engulfed by the large Orcaltodon, eating whatever bodies it found on the road. We were wondering who left us some offerings. I could always trust in you too. Sikalai said with his gravelly voice, filling the new bloods with fear. He praises Lynn and Chalee as Gardner nods his head, filled with slave meat. A bounty and a worthy challenge. Sounds like a trial we must go for. Moore tells his brothers with unanimous agreement. Then the orcs smiled as they noticed the new bodies around them. Welcome to our club, new bloods, Sikalai said with a devilish smile. Agreed, Gardner said with an unsettling laughter. Gardner said with an unsettling laughter.